All right, all. We are going to continue on with salads and dips and dressings. Let me get situated here. Come on, computer. Okay, so we left off right here. We were talking about cleaning your greens. We're going to continue on. So this goes over, you guys talked about different types of salads. This is just like a video on the 5 most popular dressings and how they're made. So I want to kind of include that so you guys could see it. So salad dressing enhances salad ingredients. Dressing type depends on texture of ingredients, like what you're serving. Light dressings would be delicate ingredients. So you have really soft greens, shallot, you could do some nice sliced poached chicken, something like that. Heavy dressings are robust and have heartier ingredients. So if you're doing like a salad with like ham and cheese and eggs and stuff, that might be your heavier dressing. But this guy makes just 5 quick dressings that are pretty simple. So I want you guys to see this and keep going.
Nobody eats a salad without a good salad dressing. Okay, fine, maybe there are a few of you out there, but most of us like a really good salad dressing. I'm going to show you 5 super popular salad dressing recipes that are homemade from scratch that you will absolutely love, and they're so easy to make. There's been like a salad dressing explosion in the grocery store in the last 20 to 30 years. If you would have went down that salad dressing aisle a few decades ago, you'd probably have 5 or 6 selections. Now you've got sun-dried tomato vinaigrette, miso vinaigrette, ranch blue cheese. I mean, you name it. It's all out there. Well, these 5 recipes that I'm going to show you today are super simple and very, very popular amongst pretty much every restaurant that you've ever eaten at. These are one of the samples or choices that they're going to offer you. So we're going to start this one off with a classic ranch dressing. I seriously grew up eating ranch dressing, so I absolutely love this, and it's so good homemade. So in a medium to large size bowl, I've got some super fatty mayonnaise. I love Duke's, by the way, and homemade is even better. Next, we're going to add in a bit of buttermilk, going to help loosen it up and add some nice vinegary and milky flavors. Now I've got some granulated garlic. These are the granules, not the powder. I like this better. And the same with the onion. They are onion granules, not onion powder. Now what I'm going to do is add in some dry dill, followed up with seasoning it with some sea salt and some fresh cracked black pepper. Go ahead and grab a whisk and mix everything until it is completely combined. It should be sort of like a slightly loose consistency, just like this. You want to be able to coat lettuce, but you don't want it to drip off. Nothing is worse than a very loose ranch dressing. The point is to coat the lettuces, the greens, or the vegetables that you happen to dip in there. What I'm going to do is just pour it in a nice little container like this because, well, it looks nice, and that's what I'm going to pour into my salads. I guarantee you did not think a ranch dressing was so easy to make. Few ingredients, but oh my goodness, nothing like a homemade ranch dressing. Forget that packet, forget that bottle at the grocery store. Just like one of my old friends used to say, if Paul Newman, even in light of all the good work he does, can make a salad dressing, so can you. You can do this from home. You got it. Great for dipping veggies, my friends. Dang good. Probably lasts about 2 weeks in the refrigerator. Now we're going to make one of my other favorites, a homemade blue cheese dressing. This is absolutely one of my favorites, and again, using Duke's mayonnaise, and no, this is not an endorsement, I just love them. We're going to add some to a medium-sized bowl.
Sorry, my computer went. Okay, let's go.
Classic in a recipe like this. Now go ahead and grab your whisk and mix everything cream. Next thing we're going to do is pour in some buttermilk. Again, going to add a nice tang to this. Now I've got some garlic granules, just like in the ranch dressing. Next thing we're going to do is hit it with a little bit of sugar just to help sweeten it up just a tad. Then I've got some sea salt, some fresh cracked black pepper, and then what I'm going to do to add a little bit more flavor is hit it with some Worcestershire sauce and some plain white distilled vinegar. That's pretty classic in a recipe like this. Now go ahead and grab your whisk and mix everything until combined, and it should be a nice smooth consistency, just like the ranch, a little bit loose but thick enough to coat greens and vegetables. I want to stop before we add this last crucial ingredient and say this. It is going to be so beneficial if you get a really good blue cheese. I'm a huge fan of Maytag Blue, and I love Point Reyes Blue as well. When you're at the grocery store in the cheese department, a lot of times you can ask them to sample or try it, and they will give you some. I'm not saying you shouldn't buy a $1 or $2 on sale crumbled blue cheese, but if you spend a little bit extra, I promise you that dressing is going to be so much better. Now let's finish it up. So I've got some really good Maytag blue cheese that I'm going to scoop in there using a rubber spatula. So this part, I'm not going to use a whisk. And really that's because I don't want to break up the blue cheese so that the blue cheese breaks down even more. I like those big crumbles. They add a lot of flavor to this blue cheese dressing. So my advice is don't whisk it and break it up. Fold it in using a rubber spatula or some sort of spoon. And if you're serving this like I am, I just decided to put it in a mason jar because it looks good and it'll hold well with the top in the refrigerator. Oh my gosh, I can't even talk. It's just so good. I'm spooning this into my mouth after I was making. Oh my gosh. I don't even know I can't even talk. It's so good. It's so easy to make. It's like nothing. You saw it. You probably have most of those ingredients in your cupboard already. I'm spooning it into my mouth like a crazy man. But it's so delicious. You can do this from home. Now, the next one, we are going to do an American style Italian dressing. Here we go. This brings back some great memories. What I'm going to do is add in some red wine vinegar to a medium or large size bowl. Next, I'm going to hit it with a little bit of Dijon mustard. You could use whole grain mustard or even dry mustard here. Now I'm going to add in some freshly minced garlic cloves, followed up with some dry oregano. And then next I'm going to add in some dry basil. Now to hit it with a little bit more ingredients, I've got some fresh chopped parsley. You could use dry parsley. I think fresh just adds a little bit better flavor. I don't like dry parsley. It tastes sort of like nothing to me. Next, some crushed red pepper flakes, some sugar for some sweetness. We're of course going to hit it with some finely grated Parmesan cheese. We want to season it up with some fresh cracked black pepper, some sea salt, and then it's time to emulsify this vinaigrette. I'm using a blend. It's just 50-50 olive oil and safflower oil. If you have another healthy oil that you like to use, perhaps it's avocado oil or algae oil, totally up to you, but try to make it neutral in flavor. You want to slowly pour this in while constantly whisking. This is where the emulsification comes from. If you don't feel like you can do this, my suggestion would be to use some beaters or in a stand mixer with the whisk attachment that you can constantly be able to emulsify the dressing. You don't want it to break. That's when you lose a lot of the flavor and all of a sudden all you're tasting is oil. See all that goodness at the bottom? It's going to be awesome when we shake it up and serve it. It's funny because when I eat at my Italian side of the family's house and they make salad, it's like 2 or 3 ingredients. Red wine vinegar, a little bit of oil, and maybe sugar. That's it. Now, if you wanted to get a little bit more advanced than that, they'd probably add in some chopped parsley, maybe a little oregano or rosemary, and the sugar would stay the same, and garlic. That's it. We're not going crazy here. That is probably the most advanced you would ever see, even overseas. Now, this American version is super good. It's just loaded with way more ingredients. It kind of reminds me of the ones that my dad would marinate steak in back when I was a little kid. Maybe for you too. It's really tasty, don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to let you know and give you a little context of what maybe they're doing overseas. It's not as sort of complex as the one that I just created. Now we're gonna make one of my all-time favorites. You've seen me do it before, but I wanna have it in this video, a homemade balsamic vinaigrette. In a medium-sized bowl, I'm just going to add in some balsamic vinegar. Find out what's on sale. You'll be fine. Use some small diced shallots, a little bit of fresh chopped basil. You could use dry basil too if you'd want. Now I've got some whole grain mustard. You could use Dijon mustard or even dry mustard. And for some sweetness, what I want to do is add in some honey. You see how quickly it pours? If you've ever had trouble pouring honey, just pop it in the microwave for like 10 seconds. It completely loosens up and makes it very easy to pour. Next, using a 50-50 blend again of olive oil and safflower oil, we are going to slowly drizzle this in while continually whisking. This will emulsify much easier because the honey, it's nice and thick. It sort of brings everything together. Once it is done being whisked, we're just going to transfer this over. Again, I just like using mason jars. They've got lids. They hold really well in the refrigerator. Or if you've got another container you'd like to store it in, that would work excellent as well. Okay, a few substitutions before we go on to this next one, starting with the sweetener. I used honey. I just love it in there. I think it helps emulsify it better too, but you can certainly use sugar, or you can even use agave or even maple syrup. As far as the basil goes, you can absolutely use dry basil. Just cut the amount I did in half. All right, now the last one, super classic, definitely a 1950s, 1960s style dressing that was really popular, called a Thousand Island. No need to use sweet relish. I've got some homemade bread and butter pickles that I'm going to slice up. And then what I want to do is sort of roughly dice them just like you see here. This is excellent. Next thing I do, I've got some hard-boiled eggs. Be sure to check out my video on how to perfectly hard-boiled eggs. And instead of chopping them and sticking to my knife, I hate when that happens, I just grate it on a grater. I don't know, it just works really well and comes together with ease. I do it right on parchment paper so that it's also easy to pour. You could use a plate, no problem. So in a bowl, I'm going to be using some mayonnaise. Make sure that bowl's medium to large size. Next thing I want to do is add in a little bit of finely minced yellow onion, followed up with the pickles that we diced up. Next thing I'm going to add in there is some pimentos. You could use some roasted red bell peppers too if you want. It's just a classic ingredient in this recipe. Now I'm going to grab those eggs and just sort of pour them right in there on the parchment paper. That's why I like it, and I can discard the parchment when I'm done. Now what I want to do is add in some chili sauce. This is very classic in this. If you can't find chili sauce, use ketchup, you'll be fine. We're going to hit it with some Worcestershire sauce. Next, I'm going to add in some plain white distilled vinegar. Then, for a little heat, some Tabasco sauce. Then, of course, just season it with some sugar, a little bit of sea salt, and fresh cracked black pepper. I'm also not going to use a whisk here. I'm just going to fold it in using a rubber spatula. You, of course, could use a spoon, no problem. I just don't want to break down any of the ingredients like the pickles or the eggs that are kind of gentle. I think those chunks in there make it nice and definitely keep it classic. I just want to take this and dump it all over a cheeseburger and make my own version of the Big Mac. It is so good. When you make this stuff homemade from scratch, any of these vinaigrettes or dressings in general, these creamy dressings, they are so good, so much better than anything you're going to pour out of the bottle. I can't say it enough. Homies, to my chefs in training out there, you put these fundamental techniques into practice, like how to emulsify a vinaigrette while slowly drizzling in oil and whisking in the other hand until it is perfect, using herbs, using spices to make things so tasty. We're talking about a salad dressing here. This isn't rocket science. We're just trying to dress up a green salad. Nothing more than that. But when you do it and you do it right, it is just so dang good. Now, obviously, I don't have anything to plate up, so there'll be no slow-mo, but check out these beauties.
All right, so easy dressings. Just thought you guys could see this. I thought it was pretty good. Just give you a quick highlight on the different types. And then you guys who were here last week, sorry, let me move to the next one. You guys who were here last week, you saw how easy it was to make ranch. Like, we made all our own ranch in-house. It was like 5 ingredients. It was buttermilk, mayonnaise, granulated garlic, granulated onion, Italian seasoning, and then of course salt and pepper. That's just a gimme. But it was amazing just to see how you guys made that real quick, and then you tried it and you're like, oh my gosh, all this time I've been buying this stuff at the store, and it's like 1/10 of the price just making it yourself. All right, so types of dressing, primary dressings, you got vinaigrette, emulsified vinaigrette, mayonnaise based, and mayonnaise. So vinaigrette is basically like you put oil and vinegar together, add whatever you want to it. It's separated because oil and vinegar don't mix automatically unless it's emulsified, which is this right here, which you saw him do with that Italian dressing, where he put all the ingredients minus the oil, then whisked in the oil slowly to incorporate air. And then what that does is it stabilizes. So it incorporates the air and then it doesn't fall out or doesn't, separate. Okay. Vinaigrette dressing, oil vinegar, lighter, thinner dressings used on delicate ingredients. So remember that. So your vinaigrettes are used on delicate salads. Now, hold on, I'm doing a video. Standard ratio, 3 parts oil to 1 part vinegar, and then substitute vinegar with acidic juice like lemon juice. Then you have, this is one with emulsions as well, which we'll do. Let me play this real quick, and then let me see what's on this next one. Yeah, let's play this one real quick so you guys can see this as well.
Every good vinaigrette starts out as an emulsion.
So what is an emulsion? Well, it might be quicker to ask what isn't an emulsion because they're everywhere around us in the kitchen. Mayonnaise is an emulsion. Milk, cream, it's all emulsions.
Right, a good pasta sauce is an emulsion, butter is an emulsion, and of course a vinaigrette is an emulsion.
So an emulsion is a homogeneous mixture between two ingredients that don't normally like to mix together, but together they are greater than they are alone.
Just like me and you, Katie.
That's right.
I'm Kenji Lopez-Alt.
And I'm Katie Quinn.
And on this episode of the Food Lab,
Emulsions.
Now, let's pretend for a second that Katie, the oil molecule,
And Kenji, the water molecule.
we just don't like each other.
Yeah, pretend.
Now, typically oil and vinegar, which is mostly water, they don't mix. They're actually physically repulsed by each other.
Now, let's pretend there are thousands of little Katie and Kenji clones all jammed together in one room. Left to their own devices, they'd separate like kids at a high school dance.
Right, and that's exactly what happens when you combine oil and water in a cup and let it sit out for a while. It eventually coalesces and separates into layers.
But now imagine there's an earthquake and all the little Katie and Kenji clones get jumbled all together. It makes them a lot harder to find each other.
This is like what happens when you really vigorously mix that oil and vinegar. It's what we call a weak emulsion, and although it might look homogeneous at the beginning, given enough time, it will also eventually separate into two distinct layers.
What we really need to form a stable emulsion is one of these.
A finger trap.
Now, it only looks like a finger trap to you. It's actually an emulsifier. It's what's gonna stick me to you.
Now, this kind of emulsifier is called a surfactant, and it contains both hydrophobic,
Which means water-fearing, but for our purposes, oil-loving.
and a hydrophilic end, which means water-loving. And this is what allows Katie and I to coexist harmoniously. Typically in a vinaigrette, there's actually going to be several water molecules surrounding every single oil molecule.
Lucky me. Culinarily speaking, those surfactants come in a few forms. Mustard and egg yolks are both common surfactants, and any good vinaigrette recipe probably has one of the two. Want a demo?
Yeah, well, we got two identical containers here. One of them has just oil and red wine vinegar. The other's got oil, vinegar, and a little bit of Dijon mustard. We're gonna shake them up at the same time and then see what happens. You ready to shake?
Ready.
All right. Let's put them down. Okay, so you can see that clearly the one with no mustard separates way faster than the one with mustard, and that is chemistry in action.
But oil, vinegar, and an emulsifier does not salad dressing make. Technique is at the heart of everything. Let's experiment.
My basic salad dressing ratio is 3 parts oil, like this olive oil, and 1 part vinegar, like red wine, white wine, or balsamic, along with 1/3 part Dijon mustard, salt and pepper, and any aromatics you like herbs, shallots, garlic.
As fascinating as emulsions may be, are they really necessary? I mean, can I just throw oil and vinegar on my greens and call it a salad?
Well, we set up a little experiment to find out. So we've got 3 identical bowls of greens here. The first one we're going to dress with oil alone. Now, the second one we're going to dress with vinegar alone. Finally, the third one we're going to dress with a properly emulsified vinaigrette. By the way, the best way to emulsify a vinaigrette is to put it in a container like this and shake it.
Now we're gonna transfer the greens to this strainer over a bowl to catch any drippings and see what happens.
So it's been about 5 minutes now. Let's see what we've got. So the first bowl was oil alone, and it looks like there's no drippings at all, which is good because that means all of the oil is stuck to the leaves. You see, leaves have this waxy oil-based cuticle on them that's designed to keep the weather out, and that is the perfect surface for oil to cling to. Now let's check out the vinegar. So here we can see that, well, pretty much All of the vinegar has dripped right off of those greens, and that's because of that weather barrier. It's as if every single leaf is wearing a teeny tiny little raincoat. Anything water-based just slides right off. So the vinegar has bright flavor, but it doesn't stick to your greens. Finally, let's check out the properly emulsified vinaigrette. And again, it looks like this one, like the oil, has 0 drippings. Everything is right on those greens, including the vinegar. So that's good news for us because that means that these greens are gonna have bright acidic flavor. What's more, a properly emulsified vinaigrette will actually protect those greens from the full raw power of the oil. So not only do your greens taste better, but they also look better and last longer. Now we get to one of my favorite culinary emulsions, mayonnaise. As a kid, I never really liked this stuff because we always got the commercial jars and I just don't trust things that jiggle like that, you know?
Homemade mayo, on the other hand, is light, creamy, flavor-packed, and incredible. All you need is eggs, oil, lemon juice, and mustard.
Like a vinaigrette, mayonnaise is actually an oil in water emulsion. The difference is that it's a much more stable emulsion than a salad dressing, and you have a much higher proportion of oil to liquid.
Such a high proportion, in fact, that it actually becomes thick enough to hold its shape.
Right, but to make such a stable emulsion, you can't just shake it up. It just doesn't come together. You can't break the oil and water down into fine enough droplets.
Traditionally, mayonnaise is made by slowly drizzling oil into a bowl with egg yolks, lemon juice, and mustard.
You want to pour the oil for me while I whisk?
Yeah.
Now the idea is that you whisk it really, really vigorously while you're adding the oil in a thin, steady stream. But if you accidentally add the oil too fast, Katie, would you? Your mayonnaise breaks, and it's almost impossible to get it to come back together again. You have to start over completely. And even if you do manage to get a good mayo, and that takes considerable wrist action, it's never gonna be as thick as a real mayonnaise. If, on the other hand, you got one of these guys, you're just about a minute away from excellent homemade mayo. All you need is 2 eggs, a dollop of mustard, a teaspoon of lemon juice, and a little bit of water in the bottom of a jar that just fits the head of a blender blade. Fill it up with oil by about 1.5 cups, then put it down on a table and stick that blender blade all the way in the bottom.
As your blade spins, it creates a vortex, and that vortex slowly draws oil downward, incorporating it just a tiny bit at a time. As you slowly pull the blade head up through the mixture, more and more oil gets incorporated until, there, perfect mayonnaise in less than a minute.
I'd rub that on my sandwich. The really awesome part is that you can make hollandaise using this exact same method. Just leave out the mustard, replace the oil with hot melted butter, and you've got one of the world's most difficult culinary sauces in a fraction of the time and with no practice at all.
Mastering the art of emulsions opens up all kinds of possibilities. Beyond surfactants, there are physical emulsifiers, things like cornstarch and flour.
Or honey or gelatin. The thing about emulsions is that they are always thicker than either of their 2 constituents on their own.
Mayonnaise is way thicker than egg yolks or oil.
Right, and just look at the 2 of us. Now that we've been properly emulsified, we're thick as thieves.
Right.
I know that was cheesy, but I just wanted you guys to see that. And like they said, you know, we'll do emulsifications in culinary where we do them with the whisk, so you guys have to learn it, but that was a super easy way where you did that, just adding it and using the stick blender. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're going to go with this. And then we will pick up here with the types of dressings and a little bit of dips for day 2. So that is what I have for you. Enjoy. Let me do, and then we will catch back up tomorrow.